Shabbat Shalom, welcome. You notice right away that I am in a relatively unfamiliar place. Should be quite familiar to some of you, but first of all, I'm not outside. Unfortunately, we had to cancel our outdoor services with 25 people or fewer because the air here is terrible. We were in the red actually today, the danger zone. It's really not safe to be outside for long periods of time, and sometimes you don't even know the health effects of that until later. For those who are watching outside of the Bay Area, we are fine here in Oakland in terms of the fire. There are no fires very near to us, but there are fires in every direction, and the smoke has gathered here. So while I'm disappointed about not being able to be outside with the 25 people that I'm looking forward to seeing each week, I also need to be grateful and thankful that we are safe, for so many have it so much worse. I'm in the chapel rather than the sanctuary for a couple reasons. Number one, the chapel will look very different come next week as it's going to be used as an overflow classroom for the preschool because of the ventilation and the heat and the fire issues, the smoke issues. And so you will see I'm surrounded by chairs to some extent, and that's because the room is kind of empty with the chairs on the side, so it can be used as a space for play and free play and toys and the like. But nevertheless, I have this background, and this is our small chapel. Some of you have been here many times. We generally have Friday night services here as well as Minyan. I think on YouTube it says Minyan. It means to say, oh no, it doesn't? Okay, we're good. Nevertheless, we're here. This is when we do usually our Monday and Thursday Minyans and our Friday night services. I felt like it would be nice to be in this space and share this space with those who are used to coming here and miss it, and those maybe who have never seen it. Now, interestingly enough, I'm sorry I'm talking so much at the beginning of this service, but the theme of this chapel is God as a pillar of fire, God as water, or a cloud, a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. So it's fire and water, fire and ice, fire and cloud. You can see them directly behind me reflected in the Ner Tamid, the eternal light. You see both are reflected in that. I'm actually going to spin the camera around for a second and see if this will work. And you'll see, actually I'm going to go the other way because of the way the camera is working. You can see our chapel, and eventually we'll get to the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, painted by our member Robin Hodis. Adjust it just a little bit. And that is the theme here. And we know that fire can bring beauty and light to the world, enlightenment, but it can also bring danger and pain and suffering. And so all that is inherent in what we are thinking about and doing tonight. Thank you, Jonah, for the camera work. All right, we're going to begin on page 1 with Yedid Nefesh. I want to point out that Yedid Nefesh, the additional soul, it means beloved soul, but Nefesh can also mean breath, something that is hard to come by today for many reasons, but especially those fires. So now we'll begin. Enough talking. Time to sing. Yedid nefesh avarachaman, Yedid nefesh avarachaman, Mishoch avdecha, El ritzonecha, Mishoch avdecha, Yala la 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 la, El ritzonecha. Yarutz avdecha kemo haya yishtachavei yalai yalai el mul hadarecha. Let's go to Yismachu Hashamayim. Let the heavens rejoice and the earth be glad. Doesn't seem that way right now, but we will get there. We will get there. Yismechu Hashamayim, Yismechu Hashamayim, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ. יירם הים ומלואו, יירם הים ומלואו. Or zaru, a light or fire is sown for the righteous. Or zarua latzadik uyishre lev simcha. Or zarua latzadik uyishre lev simcha. Or zarua latzadik uyishre lev simcha. Uyishre lev simcha. Or zarua latzadik uyishre lev simcha. We're going to jump now to Mizmor LeDavid, page 13. Mizmor LeDavid, Avul Adonai Bnei, Avul Adonai, Kavod Va'oz, Ay, Avul Adonai, Kevod Shemo Avul Adonai be'adrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod yirim. Adonai al mayim rabim, kol Adonai v'koach. Ay, kol Adonai ve'hadar, kol Adonai shover arazim. Vayshaver Adonai et arze Almadon, vayarkirem kemo egel Lebanon ve'et Sirion, kemo ben re'emim. Ay, kol Adonai kotev lavot esh, kol Adonai yakil mebar, yakil Adonai bakaresh, kol Adonai yechol el ayalot vayechesov ye'arot u'vehekalo kulo omer kabor. Ay, Adonai lama yashav yishev Adonai melech leolam. Adonai os le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Hey, nay, Lecha Dodi, page 15. Do it without the guitar today. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Shamor vezachor b'dibor echad, ishmianu el hameyuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, shemo tiferet ve'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי אם מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוך סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה ברמז 17 ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי על יד איש בן פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. We can rise and face the entrance. If you're home, you may want to do that. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובתולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי כלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. Page 19. מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון לזמר לשמך עליון להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות עלי עשור ועלי נבל עלי גניון בחינון מזמור שיר ליום השבת טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך עליון ולזמר לשמך עליון. Continue silently. Sadiq Tamar on page 20, but instead of the more familiar melodic one, I'm going to do the Israeli dance one. It's a sub-theme this weekend, and I'll explain why later, but if you want to do the dance, the first part goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you sway like a palm tree. That's the only part I'm going to teach you from here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sway like a palm tree, that's because the righteous shall flourish like a palm tree. צדיק כתמר יפרח יפרח, צדיק כתמר יפרח, צדיק כתמר יפרח יפרח, צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה, כארז בלבנון יזכה יזכה. Page 21. Adonai malach yot lavesh, lavesh Adonai azit azar, afti kon tevel ba'otimo, nachol kisacha me'az b'lamata, nasu nerot Adonai, nasu nerot kolam, nisu nerot ohyam. Mi kolot ma'im, ma'im rabim adirim, mishpereyam, adir b'marom, Adonai Edotecha Le'emenu me'od Le'vetecha nava Kodesh Adonai Le'orech yamim. And sadly, for the first time in a couple months, no physical minion present, so we skipped Baruch Hu. Go to page 23, Mari Varavim. Baruch atah Adonai l'nei haolam, asher bidvaro Mari Varavim. Orayom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Orayom v'layla, mavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tzva'ot shemo. Chai v'kayam, tamid, yimloch, aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Mari Varavim.
Adonai Eloheinu b'shofteinu ku'enu nesiha b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu Neged yomam v'layla Levatcha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch ata Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 25, El Melech Ne'eman. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך וכל נפשך וכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בהם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו תותפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. אדוני אלוהיכם. Top of page 32, Machuto Ratzon Tuv Alehem, Moshe ben Israel Chanashivah B'Simcha Rabbah, Ve'amru Kulam. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, norat tefilot, osef pele, norat tefilot, osef pele, מלאכותך ראו בניך, תוקע הים לפני משה זה, ואלה ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ומר כברת יעקב ומחזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom Ve'amitenu malkeinu l'chaim Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom Ve'amitenu malkeinu l'chaim Shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'amitenu malkeinu l'chaim Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom ve'amitenu malkeinu l'chaim Rosalenu sukat shlomecha baruch atah Adonai Aparei sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. All right, if you want to stand, you can for Vishamru. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת בנפש, שבת בנפש, שבת בנפש ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. We go right to the private Amidah, pages 37 through 48. 37 through 48, also a good time for your own private meditations and prayers. shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kodesh v'tevel ve'imru amen. Hey, oh, say shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kodesh v'tevel ve'imru amen.
All right, we are going to skip the Kaddish Shalem as well. Time for... What time is it, Rabbi Bloom? It's anecdote time, or famous historical figure time. That's a Camp Ramah thing. They say it's Torah time, but it's actually time to talk about a prominent Jewish person. And in this case, I looked up, were there any famous Jewish firefighters? Because, well, of what's going on in our area. And there were. Not famous enough for you to have heard of, but in the literature or in the newspapers, I found an article from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency in 1934 about a Jewish firefighter named Jacob Levy. And not just a firefighter, but the fire department chief of New York City in the 1930s. As I mentioned, this article comes from 1934. Jacob Levy was born in 1883 in the United States to a middle-class family who had a dry goods business, which tells me that their origin was probably German. I'm not for sure, but they didn't come in the waves of pogroms like most of the Eastern European Jews came. And it's also possible that he was Sephardic as well, because Levi can be a Sephardic name. In any case, he graduated from high school, PS 34, Public School 34, and went to work immediately for the National Biscuit Company, which you know is Nabisco. But he was bored, he craved excitement, and one of his friends, who was a firefighter, said he should come work for the fire department, which you couldn't do back then apparently until you were 21. But at 21 he did, he applied, his two brothers followed him into the fire department as well there, and he rose to the rank of fire chief. And he was one of 300 Jewish firefighters at that time in New York City, at the time of the article in 1934. He was said to have made the most daring ladder rescue in New York City firefighting history up until that time on Cherry Street. But after he saved the man with his daring rescue with the ladder, it was discovered that the man actually tried to set his own house on fire in an attempt to commit suicide, and he was a known arsonist. In any case, he did save him. In those days, he's describing in this article that they worked an 84-hour shift. You would have 84 hours on, 84 hours off, and they slept some of that time if they could. Some of the most memorable fires that he talked about were, and memorable usually meant awful, the Equitable Building Fire of 1912, where the fire chief actually and several other firefighters perished. The Standard Oil Fire in 1919 that burned down several city blocks. But the worst was the most famous of all, and that's the 1907 Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, where the laborers, mostly Jewish women, were locked inside the building so they couldn't leave, they couldn't take breaks, and there were 147 deaths in that fire. And it really, people realized how important it was to give workers rights. In the article, one other thing he did, actually, he as fire chief, established what is listed as the Ner Tormeed Association, which I imagine means the Ner Tamid. And it was an association not just for Jewish firefighters, but for all firefighters and families who become sick or die in service. Excuse me. When he was asked about retirement in the article, he said, "No time soon. Although my wife is a nervous wreck due to my career and wants me to quit because I've had so many narrow escapes." He displayed several scars to prove his statement. "But when I do go," he said, "I expect I'll hang around the firehouse the same as before. I've got the calling of the fireman in my blood." That is the story of Jacob Levy. All right. We're going to turn now to the Aleinu, page 57. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, ha'tekidu la leotzer v'reshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech, zulato, kakatu b'torato v'yadat hayom v'hashivota el levavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim mima'al v'ha'aretz mitachat ein od. כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. This time we lovingly recall the memory of those friends of our community, relatives and friends of our members who died this season and the years past. Their yortzites, the anniversary of their deaths, are observed this week. Thinking especially today of Lena Adowich, Philip Bierman, Ann Camus Brodke, Louis Brodowski, Eva Klein David, Celia Davis, David Davis, Philip Davis, Sylvia Davis, Peter DeVoren, Joseph Dienstag, Robert Odessis Sr., Larry Frankel, Leah Friedman, Elizabeth Glasser, Kenneth Goodwin, Bill Hale, Rose Jaffe, Manfred Kahn, Molly Kessler, Samuel Kestenblatt, Barry Stephen Kramer, Edward Kushner, Charles Levine, Samuel Langberg, Jacob Murin, Saul Quitman, one of the founders of the synagogue who owned a haberdashery in Oakland, Chaim Ram, Eileen Salk, Abraham Schaefer, Fanny Schiffman, Irving Isaac Schoen, Jacob Seltzer, Sam Silver. We're in the Shloshim, the third day mourning period for George Lindenbaum, Judith Kay, and Kay Warren. And I also want to acknowledge Hannah Rubin, the 19-year-old member of our congregation who passed away late spring. She was, the part of the cemetery where she was buried was not ready yet, so we laid her to rest, moving her from the crypt to the grave this week, and all the pain, but also all the memories of the wonderful person that she was came back to us, and I want to wish peace to her parents, Rick and Joan. The memory is involved and with us. We ask all those who wish to join me in the Mourner's Kaddish to do so at this time. It is on page 61. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'alma livrach erutei v'amlich machlutei v'chaye chon v'yomei chon v'chaye chol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'amei almaya. Yitbarach v'ishtabach v'itpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Vitadar, vitale, vitalal, shmei kudsha, barichu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, v'amiran v'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'imroma, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Zichronam livracha, may the memory of the people you've come to say Kaddish for be a blessing to you always. Announcements. Tomorrow, we will conduct services from the sanctuary. Susan Simon will be reading Torah. They're at 9:30, and Shacharit will be led by Tamar Brynis, one of our teens. Also on a Zoom service a little later, Eitan Shotland becomes bar mitzvah. Mazel tov to Eitan. I'll be joining the call late for some special blessings. Great kid. Another great kid will become bar mitzvah next Saturday. That is Joseph Blumberg. I think that's probably enough for now. There are actually 3 closing songs. Long story, we're early though, so we're good. The first one is actually a psalm which we do now every day during the month of Elul, the month that precedes Rosh Hashanah. It's on page 89 if you have the Siddur. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Shivti bebeit Adonai kol yemei chayai. Lachazot b'noam Adonai ulvaker b'heichalo. Lachazot b'noam Adonai ulvaker b'heichalo. Hope in Hashem. God will give your heart strength and resolve. Hope in Hashem. Lule manti lirot b'tuv Adonai ve'eretz chaim kavel Adonai chazak emetz libecha ve'kavel Adonai. Second closing song in honor of Susan Gilday, one of our members who's going to be here tonight, commemorating a yortzeit, and for her father, Joseph Dienstad. And she always requests this song. So in her honor, Eli Eli, which is actually called A Walk to Caesarea. And it talks about, written by Hannah Senich, a paratrooper who died behind enemy lines in World War II fighting the Nazis. She, an incredible poem that she wrote, set to music later, not by her. And it talks about how even despite the pain and the brutality of the world, something we see today, we nevertheless see the beauty of it as well. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of humanity. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, ha'or ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, ve'rak ha'shamayim, tfilat adam, ha'or ve'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, ve'rak ha'shamayim, tfilat ha'adam. O Lord, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sound and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Before the final song, one more announcement. Havdalah also tomorrow night at our house, 8:45, maybe even 8:40. And the musical theme post-Havdalah are contemporary groups with kind of a 70s, 80s singer-songwriter vibe sound, right? It's wonderful when you're an adult, you think your music is stuck back in a certain era, but you find new groups
that are doing it in new ways. Jonah will be joining me on all the songs tomorrow night, because they are, after all, contemporary songs. All right, here we go. The final song comes from tomorrow's Haftarah, from Isaiah. And it's an Israeli dance known as Manavu. It's the one where you put your right foot out in front, then to the side, then behind, then you forward, and you sway up and down, and then at the middle part, you back and forth. Anyway, I know you can't see my feet or anything, but that's what you do. Manavu, it comes, as I mentioned, from Isaiah, and it talks about good news. Manavu, how wonderful. Upon the mountain, that the person who brings good tidings is coming, announcing the redemption, announcing peace. I know it seems far away. It was for the exiles that Isaiah was preaching to as well. Manavu. Manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Oh, manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Mashemia Yeshua, Mashemia Shalom. Mashemia Yeshua, Mashemia Shalom. Manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Mashemia Yeshua, Mashemia Shalom. Mashemia Yeshua, Mashemia Shalom. Manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Manavu el harim raglei mevaser. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.